What's going on, guys? It is November 9th, 2017. It is 8 o'clock, and I want to do a follow-up video for Sports Day in the D and BBallAddicts.com in regards to the game that was played last night on NBA ESPN Wednesday between the Golden State Warriors and the Minnesota Timberwolves. So, a few takeaways from me is you got the full story and the play-by-play also uploaded on the site. The video recap is going to get posted and uploaded shortly as well on YouTube. That I wanted to see from the Golden State Warriors and what they would end up being. And the reason why, now that they sit at 9-3 and the pundits have talked about the slow start and all that's been pushed to the side, obviously, because the team is so incredibly talented, and I still don't understand for the life of me how you can have guys that come out there and say that Golden State's in trouble, but yet also bring back everyone else from the championship squad and add more pieces. I don't think I've ever seen that before in a salary cap era. But with Kevin Durant being out with the thigh contusion and the Minnesota Timberwolves getting a chance as a young team, they brought on Tom Thibodeau, Jeff Teague, Jimmy Butler, had some of those guys reunite from the Chicago Bulls days, even if you want to throw Jamal Crawford back in the day when he originally started with the Chicago Bulls. You got him up the bench, you got Taj Gibson in the starting five, and you pair that with the talented KarlAnthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins that were already on the Timberwolves. It's a chance for the Wolves to actually see where they stand against the defending NBA champions. And regardless, they played a good first half. They were up 51-50, and then it just seemed to turn like the Warriors can do. And I'm not saying that they went ahead and did this tonight, but Steve Kerr knows it. He went and talked about it. He said it was good to see a lot of these guys get a chance to get out there and get minutes and see what would happen if we get a chance to play without one of our key contributors, and being KD. Which, it was nice for him to see, but it was also preposterous for me to even think about using guys, 13, 14 guys, in a total line where they all get in minutes and they all contribute. But that's how good the Golden State Warriors are. But still, a good test for the Timberwolves and to see where they're at, because now they fall to 7-4, and the Golden State Warriors improved to 9-3. Facebook.com/ToBeAGunslinger, Twitter @JohnWhyNot. What did you think of that game? It's probably business as usual for the Golden State Warriors. But again, I want to talk about one other thing here, and I know we see this all the time, especially watching this team within the last, 3 seasons. And we all know that the Warriors didn't need Kevin Durant after winning that 70-plus games in the season, setting the all-time regular season record. But what happens is you have a team like the Warriors, and I said this before in their capsule when you talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Warriors, and the fact that they might just get bored. They've played so many primetime matchups, so many big-time games, that in essence, nothing really excites them until they end up getting farther, at least probably in the respective conference finals between the two teams, before things really start to get a little interesting. And yes, as I alluded to before, it's not one of those things that we're all used to of playing basketball games in the beginning of October. But I would think as we go along, especially into January, quite possibly mid-January, early February, that things are really going to start getting ratcheted up a few notches. And that the Golden State Warriors are going to be what everybody already assumes they will be. Even though they're already in first after that slow start, if you want to call it that. They're already 9-3. In the Western Conference, and it seems like everybody was contributing. And for the Wolves, I want to talk about a couple of things, because when I alluded to it in the article, the Wolves are far away from being a team that only won 15 games when you had Syracuse point guard Johnny Flynn being at the helm for the Wolves. I mean, the Wolves were really bad. Within about 5 seasons or something like that, they had a lot of these top picks, and none of that stuff really panned out. And then Ricky Rubio was supposed to be the savior of the franchise. He wanted to stay overseas. He didn't want to play for the team because they've been so bad. And look, the Wolves are not what they were back then. This is a team for fans to get excited about in Minnesota, even though it's going to be cold and snowy within the next few days. It's one of these teams that should, as a lot of the pundits have picked, including myself, to be one of these teams that needs to make the playoffs. They will make the playoffs. I think they have to. They have too much talent. And one of these things where you don't, I guess if you're a young team, you might not like having Tom Thibodeau as your head coach because he gets on you all the time, but darn it, I think this team really needs it, because when you have a young squad like that and you have Wiggins and Towns as arguably your best players, you can throw Jimmy Butler in there off the via trade and all that stuff too. But initially, you're starting with those two guys before all the other moves, and you have in Tom Thibodeau. You need a disciplinarian to go in there and preach defense and get these guys to grow. And what you want to see from the Minnesota Brass is having all of them grow together and having Tom Thibodeau stay there probably for 4 or 5 seasons to get the blueprint in, to get the players that he wants to get in with the organization, and figure out where they can go. Because this 5 that they have right now, maybe you throw Taj Gibson in and out after a few years and you replace him with something else. But when you have Wiggins, you have KarlAnthony Towns, you have Jeff Teague, you have something there that can stay there for a little while. I know you don't have Zach LaVine anymore or Ricky Rubio anymore, but you have a nucleus of players that are going to be able to stay and grow together a little while to actually build a culture of winning, which hasn't happened in Minnesota since KG finished with the MVP quite a long time ago in the 90s, and that's the last time the Timberwolves even won over 50 games in a season. But that's what it's going to take. And I know the NBA is a lot different with the terms of the moves and the loyalty from where players are at. They're not Kendrick Lamar. They don't have loyalty in their DNA, like Giannis said about being in Milwaukee. But what they will have is a lot of spring chickens in there with a lot of athleticism that need to learn how to grow together in order to become a great team. And Minnesota, I believe, has the ability to do that as long as they stick to the game plan and listen to Tom Thibodeau and continue to improve upon each of their skill sets as they go along. Because don't forget, KarlAnthony Towns is only in his 2nd season. I think Wiggins is only in his 3rd. So this is going to be, back-to-back Rookie of the Years between those two. This is going to be a team that's going to grow together. And when you add guys like Taj Gibson that have some, probably, if you want to call it, a little bit of a leadership role, but he's going to be an elder statesman for the team, so he's going to know what to expect of these guys. And he came out and said last night that we got humbled a little bit, and that Golden State is a little bit ahead of where we want to be. And that's obviously true right now. Minnesota's not at that level. But it's games like that that help Minnesota acquiesce to what they want to become. And that's why it's important. And also when you add guys like Jamal Crawford off the bench to help score and solidify some things, the guy's been around a block more than a few times, and he's still one of the most professional scorers that we have in the league. Former 6th Man of the Year multiple times. Minnesota's in the right spot. Yes, they got blown out in the second half of the game last night, but it shouldn't really change what a lot of people think about Minnesota. But what did you think about that game? Facebook.com/TBUGunslinger, Twitter @JohnRyanOtt. Did Golden State teach you anything last night, or is it already what you already knew? And what was your takeaway from the Minnesota Timberwolves? A few other quick hitters before we end up closing out this video. Again, the article and everything else will be posted in the link with links for you to view as far as the audio and for the play-by-play in this video recap on the article as well, even if you're also seeing it on YouTube. Boston Celtics won 10 games in a row, and I would be amiss to not talk about them. Because everybody mentions, and I covered the first game of the year when it was the Cleveland Cavaliers taking on the Boston Celtics at Quicken Loans. And yeah, it was the horrific injury of Gordon Hayward that everyone talked about. And that was one of those things that said maybe this is going to push the Celtics out of the way. Maybe not having Kyrie Irving is going to push them down into a lower seed. And I don't think anyone was questioning whether or not the Celtics would end up being a playoff team. But I don't know if anyone was thinking that the Celtics would be a #1 seed in the East. I kind of thought that they would stick within the top 3 and not fall any farther than that. I figured they would be a top 3 team. But what the Celtics are doing right now is absolutely unbelievable. But I also think it stems from what I saw in that first game that night. Even though they lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers as LeBron hit Kevin Love for a wide-open 3 in the corner, it was one of those things that I saw some growing in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, that I think this team is going to continue to improve. And whether or not they're going to get the same, and hopefully they get the same, they did get a little bit of a injury exemption from Gordon Hayward for him to be missing some time this year and possibly missing the whole season, which most certainly seems like the case, that the Celtics will be able to continue to do what they want to do, largely due to the efforts of Tatum and Brown if they continue to improve. And they look like they're great players already. And when you pair that with Kyrie Irving, that looks like he's happy to be in Boston right now and playing well, you got to look out for the Celtics. The one thing I always worried about was whether or not the Celtics, they wanted to give up too many picks in order to give up that Kyrie Irving, because again, in order to acquire him, because again, though, that top 3 pick at worst. That's going to be from the Brooklyn Nets. So that's pretty much what the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to have and what the Boston Celtics won't have going forward. But they did a good job with Brown and Tatum as far as everything else right now. And with Kyrie Irving at the helm and happy, certainly seems like the Celtics are in a good spot. In terms of what we got going on with Kawhi Leonard, I just heard today as I was watching Around the Horn, and pardon the interruption on ESPN, is that Kawhi Leonard and the injury that Greg Popovich had talked about, his rehab is progressing very slowly for Kawhi Leonard. No timetable in terms of his return, but it certainly seems like some of those guys like J.A. Adonde and Israel Gutierrez, they were mentioning that they thought maybe that Kawhi Leonard might not be available until February, and if he's not back by February, that's when you really start to worry. San Antonio Spurs got off to a great start. They had a little bit of a lull as far as a losing streak, but the Spurs are the Spurs, and they have what they have as far as that great system and Greg Popovich. I know Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili are still old, and they have to take a little bit of a leadership role, and the rest of it is just getting done by committee, especially having LaMarcus Aldridge and Pau Gasol at the helm. But still, they miss Kawhi Leonard, but I think the San Antonio Spurs can remain where they want to be in the Western Conference, and that being one of the excuse me, one of the better seeds they have right now in the West, and I hope that that continues. And I think that it will continue because Greg Popovich is not going to let them fall too far, and the Spurs are inherently the Spurs, but it seems like Kawhi Leonard is going to be missing a little bit more of a time. As we talked about before in the previous article, you had Eric Bledsoe that was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks, so that ends up happening. But on the Friday night, you're going to have the game with the Bucks on ESPN as they take on the Spurs, so you get to see Bledsoe in the new uniform and see how that rolls out. Any other surprising NBA news is that the Detroit Pistons end up winning again, so we'll see if they're actually for real, as they're going to be getting into action again soon later this week. But that's all I got for you right now. Enjoy the article. Have all the other stuff posted shortly. As far as if you have any other requests that you want to get at as far as coverage and stuff in the game, always let me know. Leave comments below. Appreciate it, guys. I will talk to you soon. Have a good one.